John Trout, Cider Blossom Orchard. It's May the 3rd today. I believe it's May the 3rd. It's Sunday. Nice day today, a little breezy and low 70s for temperatures today. We were in the low 80s yesterday, just a beautiful day. Got some cloud cover right now. It doesn't look like it's going to rain anytime soon, and that's fine. I don't need any rain in the orchard. Rain is a funny thing when you start messing with apple trees. You want rain, of course, to keep your trees healthy, but rain has a lot of negative influences when it comes to apple trees. We'll talk about that a lot this summer. So I'm never real happy to see it rain unless I need rain in the orchard to keep the roots moist. But anyway, my last video I discussed a 25-degree night, and I wanted to follow up on that in this video. And what we're going to do is we're going to go look at some buds, some apple blossoms out here on some of these trees. We're going to cut into them, and you can get a first-hand look inside of that blossom, and you can see if that ovary inside of there is damaged or if it's still green and healthy. And that gives you a general idea in your orchard of what sort of damage you suffered on one of those cold nights. So I've done that here. That's been a couple of weeks ago, and I've done that inside the orchard. And it's a lot of damage, for sure. I'm gonna have a thin crop on a lot of trees, but I do have some apples, so not a total loss. Something else that I noticed when we had that cold temperature and I got to checking some of those buds in the days that followed was anything that was what we call late pink, where before that blossom begins to open up to what we call a popcorn blossom, where it's not open, but it's just ready to pop. It's just a big red ball. Those were damaged just as well as an open blossom. But the smaller, I don't know how to do that with the fist. Okay, let's just say early pink, when those little red balls are really small, a lot of those were not damaged. So that was encouraging. Any of the late blossoms coming out, even the late blossoms that came out on the early blossoming trees, some of those fared okay. We'll take a look at that. I think it's rather interesting, and it's something that most any apple grower is going to run into before long. I'm also going to introduce you to some of the Plum Curculio's handiwork. We'll find some of that in the tree behind me. We'll take a look at that and just look at the nuisance that little critter is. And we'll certainly talk about ways to control Plum Curculio and a lot of other apple critters going forward here. But it's going to be a decent year for apples. It's going to be a good year for apple growth. I'm excited about growing out the tall spindle trees this year. They're mostly all off and running here this spring. So let's go take a look at some blossoms. Okay, here we are at a Liberty tree. This is a neighbor to the tree that we've had on video so much, but you can see this tree's got some apples that have set. So again, not a total loss on this tree. What we're going to do is take off a couple of these buds, like say this one. We're going to cut this open, and I'll show you how to do that, and you can look inside. This is something you can do right after a freeze and see if that blossom is damaged or not. Let's take a look. Okay, here is the old blossom pulled off of that tree. And what we're going to do is basically we're going to split this right down the center like yay, and get a look inside of this blossom, being ever so careful not to cut your fingers. Now we shouldn't see any brown in there, and we do, and this is actually a really good example of what you don't want to see. You see the brown inside of this blossom. That is death, and means this will not produce an apple. This should be completely green inside there if it's healthy. So this is what you can do after a freeze. Take a random sampling of 10 or so, depending on how many trees, how big your orchard. And it'll give you an idea of how many of your blossoms survived. Let's check another one. Okay, here is another blossom. This one looks healthier to me, and that's why I chose it. I'm hoping that there is some green inside of here to contrast the two. So again, we'll split. And it does look green. I didn't get all the way in. There we go. Good. So by contrast, if you take a look in this one, you'll see that we're green. Green means alive and healthy and not frozen previously. So this would be a good bud. You put this one into the good pile and say, okay, that's going to make apples. And so they keep coming back. Sorry about your luck there, little guy. Well, I stopped under the woodshed to get away from the wind noise just a little bit. I'm not sure if I succeeded in that, but I found a Liberty apple that I wanted to show you. A little bit of Curculio damage, so pretty good looking little Liberty apple. And then you see this little crescent shaped divot on these young apples this time of year. That says Plum Curculio. Plum Curculio loves cider blossom orchard. I do treat them. I do deal with them. They get some of my apples. And in years like this, when I'm not going to have a whole lot of apples, it doesn't look like, it's important to get good control right out of the gate. And you literally have to start controlling Plum Curculio immediately after blossom fall. I'll show you what I do to try to win that battle. Okay, hold the tape. Sometimes I forget that, well, most backyard apple growers don't know what a Plum Curculio is. I know I sure didn't for a lot of years. Started looking at a lot of the damage and found out what a Plum Curculio was. But what is a Plum Curculio? Well, they're about as ugly as the name. It's basically a weevil. It's snout-nosed little beetle. It's about 6 millimeters long, kind of mottled black and gray and brown. They overwinter in the vegetation around the orchard, so under the leaves in the wintertime. And then the larvae crawl out in the spring, and they pupate out of the soil. And then the females come along and they lay eggs into the little fruitlets. And I mean the little fruitlets, the little dime-sized apples on the side of your tree about a week or two after blossom drop or petal fall. And that's where you see that half moon shaped scar on the fruit. Or if the egg takes and that little critter burrows into that fruit, you'll get a worm in there and he'll crawl out, you'll get a fruit drop, and the cycle continues. That's what Plum Curculio is. And really one of the biggest apple pests of the season. And he comes right out of the gate at the beginning and must be dealt with. Now, back to the other day. So Plum Curculio was really one of the first real enemies to the apple orchard that I dealt with years ago, and really couldn't defeat him. I kind of just lived with him for a few years. I bought some of the over-the-counter sprays. One that comes to mind is, I believe it's fruit tree spray, fruit and nut tree spray, something like that. You get it off the shelf at the local department store, farm store. And I can't remember the active ingredients. I think it was basically the same active ingredient as in the Liquid 7. And it was a fungicide, insecticide into one. And I sprayed that on my trees and really did not control Plum Curculio at all with that spray. So I started looking elsewhere. I sprayed Imidan for several years and had pretty good control with Imidan. And then I got to where I couldn't get Imidan shipped anymore. And so I had to reach out further and found another product. Unfortunately, the product that I ended up with was a lot more costly than Imidam. And that product is a sail. And this gallon-sized container, boy, I'm thinking this ran $175 for this one container. Now this treats more trees than I'm going to spray in a long time. All right, this is going on its third year now, and I've not made a dent in the can. So I do have a little bit of concern about, does it lose its effectiveness over a number of years sitting in the container? And then not only does it lose its effectiveness, but you know, I can't throw out $175 every 5 years to control Plum Curculio. That's not all it controls. Codling moth, it controls a whole lot of insects. All right, and for a big orchard, no problem. This is a great product. For small guys and gals, it's pretty costly. It's often made me wonder if we couldn't have something of a co-op, a backyard apple growers co-op, where someone could get this product and then ship smaller sizes to others in the co-op, and we all share the cost of that initial purchase. But there's probably regulations on shipping and things there that I haven't checked out just yet. But maybe something there for the future. Because if you've got 6 apple trees in the backyard, you're probably not going to buy a sail. So what might you do then? There's another product called Surround. It's actually an organic product. It's clay particles, and you spray these clay particles on the apples, and Plum Curculio does not like to crawl through those clay particles, and basically it eliminates Plum Curculio, but the upkeep for the Surround, you know, every time it rains, you've got to put more back on there. There's really no holding power to that product. If I had to go back to using something off the shelf from the farm store, I would probably really ramp up the fruit and nut tree spray and concentrate it until I found how much I had to get on there to be effective to treat Plum Curculio. So that's the first nemesis. I've also seen some leaf rollers showing up out here in the orchard, and we'll get into that in our next video because it's on right now. Trees are growing. Apples are growing, trees are growing, insects and critters are coming. We've already dealt with some fungal issues, and now we're going to deal with some other pests. We can do it. I'll show you how I do it. Stay tuned, and I'm happy we've got some apples. I was afraid we lost them all. We got some apples. Thanks for watching.